are 3 really common leg problems that are hurting your riding and blocking your horse. Number 1, I call the Humpy Pumpies. And this is really common for women because women are more likely to sit toward their crotch. They're more likely to have an anterior rotation. So we're already at a disadvantage for getting the horse forward. And the Humpy Pumpies are when you try to get the horse to go forward, the hands come back, the heels come up, and the hip scooches forward, and that looks like this. So I call that the Humpy Pumpies. You can see that that is making my horse raise her head. That drops the back, and it does 2 things. It actually inhibits forward movement because it's like when you're sitting on one of those tractors with the weight sensor in the seat. If your weight comes off of the tractor chair, it actually stalls the tractor out. So you need to keep your weight in the saddle so that you can affect the horse's back from that first step going on. But when you pump, you're actually making your hand oppose your hip and your leg at the same time. So the horse is actually shut down and unable then to go forward, especially because we're pulling and kicking at the same time because the hand is going backward. So when we do the Humpy Pumpies, if you do the Humpy Pumpies hard enough, the horse will go forward. But once you do go forward, you're now off of your saddle, and so you're unable to affect the horse from those first steps because you are now perched on your horse's shoulders and you've already put the horse on the forehand. So the Humpy Pumpies simply do not work. Stop doing the Humpy Pumpies. The second one is the grinder. I call it the grinder because it's when the heel comes up. It's a variation of the Humpy Pumpies, and it's just as bad. The grinder is when you try to make the horse go forward by squeezing your heel up into the horse's side. So what this is doing, you see that it moved my horse's hips and drilled her shoulders into the ground. When I do the grinder, and I'm not putting my heel into her side the way that I see some people do because she'd probably send me into the moon, but it's, first of all, it's very rude to the horse's side to grind your heel in that way. It's uncomfortable, it creates a sharp pressure point, and the horse is going to, a lot of times, sull up and become less forward. On top of that, when we do the grinding, you lose your center of gravity. Your seat bones come up and you tip onto your crotch, and it actually puts the horse more on the forehand, making them less likely to go forward, but it also makes you more unbalanced and unstable. And so when you go forward and the horse goes forward, if they were to do something a little bit more energetic than you were expecting, you're now going to be unstable. And so you're turning into this great big wobble board that the horse is uncertain of how to carry because your weight is unpredictable and unstable. So again, it makes the horse less likely to want to go forward because your weight is wobbling all over the place and it's unstable and unpredictable. So don't do the grinder. The third bad leg is the cowboy leg, and that is when you stick your leg forward and stiffen the hip and flap your legs in like this. The reason why that's a poor non-functional leg aid is that it stiffens your hips, it throws you behind the movement, and when I go to ask her to go, she's going to have to brace her shoulder, and she's going to take really rigid steps with her neck up, and then I'm dropping her back with my tailbone. So, you know, and similarly, if I was trying to move her one way, I can get really quick, exaggerated aids. It works, but at the expense of balance, right? So I can get her to move very easily. I'm over-exaggerating. It's effective, but at the expense of her back. So it's dropping her back, and then it is very hard to recover from. So with any leg aid, we want to keep the horse underneath our center. We want to keep the movement fluid, and we want to allow the horse to move their back to breathe functionally. And the most important part is to be able to go straight at any moment. And so with all of those leg faults, the horse is disconnected from our seat. We're unable to come together in a moment's notice to change from something to something else. And it disconnects the horse's back from our bodies. So instead of being 2 functional units moving congruently, you have a rider and a horse in opposition to each other. And each one of these things requires us to use more loud and more potentially uncomfortable aids to get the horse to do what we want. So what's the ideal leg aid? The ideal leg aid is one that comes out of your center. So when I'm asking the horse to go forward, I pick a focal point, think about my center going there, maybe apply a little tiny pressure with my thigh, and then I just follow. So this horse is very sensitive, and she's a good example for what it is that I need to do with my leg. Say I want to speed up, pick a focal point, think about going there, and my center is taking her there. So there's no need to do all these big things. Pick a point, think about going there, and then there's no need. If I were to accompany with a little extra leg, say I want to get over there, I can just maybe fluff my leg a little bit, like I'm just bouncing it a little bit so that it isn't incongruent with my center. So when I go to use my leg, I want to make sure that it's not opposing my center. I'm looking where I want to go, I'm moving how I want her to move, and we're moving together as two bodies harmoniously, as opposed to doing things just to get the job done that create more problems to fix down the road.